She left me for a man in a shiny black Jeep, the kind that throws sunlight like knives when it turns onto a dirt road. And the day she drove away, I was still sweating from the fields, with a basket of yams mud on my feet. A promise in my mouth I couldn't quite swallow. Months later, she came back on a rattling bus, with a small bag, and eyes that had learned how to keep secrets, and I'm telling you the truth right now. I almost didn't recognize the girl I once thought I'd marry. Before you decide I'm the fool in this story, hear me out. Then tell me if I deserved what came next. My name is Chidi, and for most of my life my alarm clock was the rooster and the sun, not an app. I farm yams the way some people keep a diary. Every mound is a line I wrote with my hands. Every harvest a sentence I hoped would hold. My shirts were patched at the elbows, my slippers thinned by the long walk to market. But my voice was steady, and in a place like mine that counts for something. In the evenings I'd stop by her family compound with roasted groundnuts, or a small calabash of palm wine for her father, because respect opens doors that money only knocks at. Her name was Ifeoma, graceful like morning light, beautiful like the hibiscus that bursts red on the roadside after the first hard rain. And when she crossed the village square, the world paused like someone had pressed a thumb on time. Men forgot their change, women forgot the argument they were about to win, and I forgot how to breathe just long enough to make a fool of myself. We had a spot under a mango tree where the heat turned into a kind of mercy. I'd say what I had to say, not dressed up, just truth. I may not have riches, but I have a heart that won't betray you. Stand with me, and I'll work until your belly never knows. Worry will build slow, but will build real. She'd smile that polite smile that means a person likes you and doubts you at the same time. You know what I mean? Sometimes I'd watch her eyes travel from my rough palms to my dusty shirt, and I could feel her patience sliding away like water running off clay that never quite holds. It wasn't only her voice arguing with me, it was a chorus. At the stream, her friends would tease, so you, the most beautiful girl in the village, will marry a farmer. Imagine yourself carrying yams to market in the hot sun. No, you deserve a man who buys lace, a man who takes you to the city, a man who treats you like a queen. Her mother said beauty doesn't cook soup, marry a man with character. And her father said, wealth comes and goes, character remains. And I stood there with dirt under my nails and a proverb like a drum in my chest. Yam grows slowly, but when the harvest comes, it fills the barn. Hold up, because this is where the road turns. One afternoon, we heard a sound. We didn't recognize, an engine growling through dust, like something expensive had lost its way and liked it. A black Jeep rolled into the square windows, tinted rims polished like mirrors, and children chased it the way children chase anything that looks like tomorrow. A man stepped out in a starched white caftan and a gold wristwatch that caught the sun and threw it back harder. He introduced himself like the village had been waiting for him, Kunle. City man, soft voice, smooth smile, here to inspect land for a palm oil project. And before sunset, he had bowed to elders with perfect form, slipped crisp notes to children like blessings, and promised jobs the way a rainy season promises everything at once. And then he saw her. Of course he did. Ifeoma was returning from the stream water jar on her head, laughter like a bell that refused to be ignored. And I watched him watch her. That slow smile people wear when they believe the world is a vending machine, and they've got all the coins. The next day, he walked into her compound with gifts that didn't know how to be humble. Imported rice bottles of wine, a little packet of sugar that made the aunties gasp. And he told her parents these were small tokens. Small tokens, my brother. Right. When he finally talked to her alone, he leaned in like secrets were currency and said, "Beauty like yours doesn't belong to mud huts and yam barns. Come to the city, and I'll show you a life you never dreamed." Do you feel that tug in your chest? The one between sense and sparkle? Because she did, and I did, and the whole village did. That evening, I brought her a basket from my best harvest and found her under the mango tree, eyes distant mind already test-driving leather seats. "Chidi, don't you ever dream of more?" she asked. "Don't you want a life where you don't bend under the sun every day?" I told her I do. But I dream the way seeds dream, slowly, honestly planting today, so our children can eat tomorrow. It may not be fast, but it will last. She shook her head, and before I could speak again, the jeep rolled past, music too loud, coonly at the wheel, with that wristwatch winking at our small life like we were a joke he was being patient about. And then the word that splits a life into before and after. Yes. She said yes to the city, yes to the jeep, yes to the promise that arrives wrapped in glass. She stepped into the passenger seat with a small bag, but pride travels heavy, and the car sank on that side a little more than it should. Her father stood in the doorway, with disappointment hanging over him like rain about to happen. Her mother tried to fold worry into excitement. Neighbors whispered the things neighbors always whisper. Who wants to suffer when riches are calling? And I stood by the mango tree with my hands suddenly empty, while she looked back once and the dust swallowed me whole. What did I do next? The part people skip, because heartbreak is more interesting than routine. I worked. I joined a cooperative with young farmers who were tired of being the punchline. We pooled what we had bought, new tools, traded techniques, learned how to argue with the soil until it agreed to be generous. I wore the same patched shirts, walked the same road to market. But something in me refused to bend. The way it used to grief was a mule, and I hitched it to the plow. People laughed behind their hands, poor Chidi. He lost to a city man, and I answered by stacking tubers in the barn until the laughter started veering off to find an easier target. Meanwhile, word of her new life came back like postcards the wind forgot to deliver on time. Photos of Ifioma by a pool, by a mall, by that black jeep in dresses that looked like they were sewn out of a dare, crystal glasses in her hand, a smile that said, "See, I was right to leave." Her friends showed the pictures around, like proof that the staircase out of our village was polished and waiting, and even though I didn't ask to see the pictures, found me because envy has a GPS. Now listen, because the shine always cracks first in the quiet. At first, the city treated her like a queen. Sunlight poured through wide windows onto glass floors. She dined in restaurants where waiters bowed. She rode in that jeep while people stared and calculated. Then small things went crooked. Kunla started coming home late. His voice went from sweet to sharp. Some nights he smelled like a bar and somebody else's perfume. And when she opened the wardrobe to admire her silk dresses, she found an envelope tucked between them. Electricity rent credit cards, numbers that make your chest tight just to read. When she asked about it, he snatched the papers and said, "Don't touch what you don't understand." You know that tone, the one men use when their lies are getting sore from being stretched. She thought he was stressed. Big men, big problems. Then the gifts slowed, the dinners got cheaper. The neighbors started giving her that smirk that means we've seen this show before. One night when she asked, "Do you still love me?" he laughed, with a mouth that had forgotten how to be kind, and said, "Love doesn't pay bills." That line. People who like the mirror more than they like the truth say it all the time. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. A few afternoons later, the front door shook like a drum. Boom, boom, open up, and men pushed inside with faces that had no time for poetry, police behind them. They did not bring questions, they brought lists. Unpaid debts, fraudulent deals, bounced checks. They unplugged the television, pulled up the rug she posted about last week, carried the sound system like it had insulted them personally, and outside, in full view of neighbors, the shiny black Jeep got its own set of handcuffs, a tow truck, rolling away while people leaned over balcony rails to watch. In the middle of it all, she kept saying, "Tell them they're lying," and he kept not answering, and sometimes silence confesses by itself. Here's the twist, and it still turns my stomach when I say it out loud. He borrowed to impress her. The apartment, the parties, the gifts, the dinners, loans on loans, a palace of sand built to catch a girl who didn't know the tide and the waves finally came. He said it with his face in his hands, when there was nothing left to protect. I never had the wealth you dreamed of, it was all loans and lies. Yeah, that happened. The next morning he vanished, a ghost who remembered to take his shoes. She woke to an empty half of the wardrobe, a dead phone, and a silence you can drown in even while breathing. She called numbers that used to pick up, nobody did. She walked the city in the same dresses that had once announced her triumph, and now felt like a joke that didn't land. Friends who loved her selfies avoided her in person, and every step she took sounded like regret. Pride is a beautiful bird until it realizes you can't eat feathers. When hunger got louder than shame, she did the bravest thing. She came home. She packed what little she had into a small bag, bargained her way onto a bus, heading east, and every bump on the road shook loose another glittering lie, until what was left was a girl and a hard lesson. The village knew before the bus arrived. Villages always know. And when it pulled in, children lined the road for a better look. Women peeked behind their wrappers. Men shook their heads so slightly it almost looked like wind. I was there. Same mango tree, different man. Behind me, a truck with our co-op logo sat ready workers loading tubers in a rhythm that made me proud, my shirt clean, my sandals new, my voice calm, as I told someone to tie down the top row so we didn't lose our profit on a curve. Growth looks sudden from outside, but on the inside it feels like a long conversation with your own doubt. She stepped down from the bus with her shoulders drawn inward, eyes swollen, clothes tired from holding her together. When our eyes met, there was no old movie magic, just a sadness as clean as a cut. She came close enough to share the same patch of dust and said my name, Chidi, like it was both question and apology. The village leaned in around us the way people lean toward fire when they're not sure if it's going to warm or burn. "What do you want?" Ifioma, I asked, and I used her full name because nicknames belong to a gentler time. "Forgiveness," she said, "a second chance, even if it's just to start as friends." I looked past her for a moment, toward a horizon that had never promised me anything it couldn't deliver, and I remembered the groundnuts wrapped in paper the way she had once measured my hands and found them wanting the dust rising behind that Jeep, and the long season of working with a broken thing inside me until it held weight again. So I told her the truth. "I gave you my heart once, and I told you our love would be like yam, slow to grow, but filling when it arrives. And you laughed at the seed and ran toward a harvest made of glass. My harvest came, but not for you. Someone stood with me when I was weak. She is my wife, and together we reap what patience planted." You could feel the air change when I said wife, a word that lands heavy because it carries a doorway with it. That was the second twist some people didn't want. Not the angry revenge ending, not the easy reunion either, just the hard one that life prefers. I had moved on. Is that fair? If it were you, after everything, would you have taken her back? Or do you think forgiveness without trust is just a house without a roof? Say it straight in the comments, I can take it. She sank to the ground, as if her knees had been waiting for permission, tears darkening the dust that has saved and shamed us all at one time or another. Some people pitied her, some people enjoyed it more than they will admit, but everyone understood the lesson, even if they didn't like its taste. Beauty fades, wealth deceives, character endures. That night she returned to her father's hut, and the only sound louder than the crickets was a sigh that came from somewhere too old to be mapped. Days became quieter. She worked around the compound, fetched water, helped at the market, and the whispers followed like goats that don't know when to stop. That's the girl who traded the gold of the heart for the glitter of the eye, people said. And I hated that sentence because it used her name like a warning label. But I understood why it stuck. Her old friends kept their distance because shame is contagious if you let it be. And the suitors who once promised the moon remembered they were afraid of heights. When I passed near the stream, I'd sometimes see her shoulders relax the way a person's shoulders do when they stop arguing with themselves. And I'd think, may your next harvest be honest, even if it's small. Here's the part that doesn't go viral. I didn't celebrate being right. I didn't walk through the square with a proverb on a banner. I went back to the fields, came home to a wife who looks at me like a house she helped build, and we learned how to have the kind of days that don't make noise but hold steady anyway. Wealth builds houses, character builds homes. And when I say that I'm not showing off, I'm reminding myself not to get clever and break what patience fixed. But let me open the circle wider, because stories like this slip too easily into blame. We tell girls like Ifeoma to be wise while the whole village sells them shine. We judge their choices without counting the pressure we cooked them in. We shame poverty like it's a moral failure and act stunned when glitter wins at the crossroads. Do you think that's fair? Who taught her to believe a black Jeep was safer than a calloused hand? Her or the rest of us? If our daughters are standing in the same dust tomorrow, hearing the same promises, what are we changing besides our tone? If you're still listening, thank you. And if you're angry with me for closing the door, I get it. Part of me wanted to open it just to see if the story could be softer. But forgiveness is not a time machine, and love without trust is a roof without nails. The first hard wind and everything comes down. I chose to keep what I had built safe, to honor the woman who stood in the field with me when my name was a joke, and to leave the past as a teacher, not a tenant. A few weeks later, I was back under the mango tree with my wife watching our workers tie down a load, and I saw Ifeoma walking with the other women. Water jar steady on her head posture that looked like a prayer finally answered. She caught my eye and gave me a small nod, not begging, not accusing, just a human nod that said we survived what tried to break us, and I lifted my hand as a blessing more than a wave. Peace can be no louder than that. A nod in the place where a war used to live. So now it's your turn. If it were you, would you have taken her back? Or do you believe some doors once closed should stay closed so the house can stay standing? Do you think the village helped push her into the Jeep? And if so, how do we build a world where patience is more attractive than performance? Tell me where I was wrong. Tell me where I was right. Tell me what I missed. Drop your thoughts below, argue with me, share your own crossroads. The time you chose glitter over grit or grit over glitter and what it cost you. And if this story hit you anywhere near the heart, like the button, send it to someone who needs the reminder and subscribe so we can sit together again next time under this mango tree we call the internet and try to tell the truth until the harvest shows up.